They have already closed 38 Planned Parenthood facilities. All the Planned Parenthoods in Louisiana, the biggest Planned Parenthood abortion center in the whole Western Hemisphere in Houston, Texas, they are shuttering these facilities, and no more children will die there and no more women will be harmed there.
Since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the pro-life movement has changed, and so has the way we fight for the unborn. Many celebrated and stepped back, thinking the war was over, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Abortion didn't end, it just slipped out of sight. And when no one is watching, injustice thrives. We're here to show you why the battle still rages on and how to stand, speak, and fight back in a post-Roe world. This is the CPC Podcast. All right, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to the CPC Podcast, and welcome in if you guys are new. My name's Chrissy, and if you're unfamiliar with the Center for Pregnancy Choices metro area, we are the largest pregnancy resource center in the state of Mississippi, and we exist to empower the choice for life. In the studio with us today, I have, again, our Executive Director, Miss Erin Kate Good. Erin Kate, how are you today?
Good morning. Doing great. Glad to be here.
It's good to be back. A lot's happened since the last time that we did this, huh?
Yes.
And I just wanted you to know that I am geeking out today because of who we have not in the studio today. And so we have a very special guest that I'm so excited about. And Erin Kate, I just kind of wanted you to introduce us as to who that special guest is.
Sure. We have Mr. David Bereit. He is a national pro-life hero of mine, and so many in the pro-life movement. Such an encouragement. You're in for a treat to talk with him today. He is actually going to be our banquet speaker this fall, so we're going to talk about that. But David is the founder of 40 Days for Life, which is the largest grassroots pro-life organization in the world. They have seen 100 abortion facilities close and saved over 14,000 lives. And he is now the executive director of the Life Leadership Conference, which is a new thing that he'll be able to tell us about as well. So we're so excited to have him here.
We are so excited. So let's go ahead and bring in David. It is
Good morning. Oh, hello. It is so good to be with you.
Thank you so much for doing this. We're so
You
excited to get to talk about just what the pro-life movement looks like on a more national level. So we wanted to bring in the best. So we just wanted to dive right in.
Sure.
So you have been in this movement for a long time. Could you just give us a little bit about just the history of how you kind of have your heart for the unborn and how the grassroots movement started for you?
Well, Chrissy, thank you so much. And Erin Kate, I can't describe how appreciative I am for having the opportunity to join you and your audience for this podcast. You know, I'm the last person I would have ever expected to be involved in the pro-life movement. I was, maybe somebody who's listening and watching can relate to this, but I was very reluctant. I didn't want to get involved in anything controversial. And even though I'd been raised in a Christian home, we really never talked about in my childhood and even at my church growing up, the issue of abortion. And it wasn't until I moved from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania down to Texas to go to school at Texas A&M that suddenly I was there in the Bible Belt and surrounded by on-fire Christians who really helped me to recognize not only the importance of the gospel message of 2,000 years ago and its relevance to today, but also helped me to understand what abortion was and how every time a child made in God's image and likeness perishes, how much that grieved God. And also what an injustice this was as children were perishing, but also as women were being harmed by abortion. So I became what I would call now passively pro-life. Oh, I don't like abortion, but I didn't think it affected me. So I didn't want to get involved in the controversy. But that all began to change when two things happened in my life. Number one is I met a girl, and that was my now wife of 33 years, my best friend, Margaret. We met as students at Texas A&M, and Margaret was raised in a Catholic Christian family in Corpus Christi, Texas, and they were involved every week in pro-life activities in Corpus Christi. They would go and pray outside of abortion centers, and one by one, they saw every abortion center in that entire city close its doors and go out of business. So as Margaret shared these stories with me, as we began dating and eventually got engaged and married, I began to sweat a little bit thinking, oh no, do I have to actually do something about this problem? But I was living in College Station, Texas. There was no abortion center. So I thought, I'm off the hook. But all of that really changed with the second event. And that was when Planned Parenthood announced they were going to build the first abortion facility in that town. They saw the market with college students and they said, we're going to build an abortion facility. And they raised money and they started the construction on it. And I have to say, Chrissy and Aaron Kate, that was for me where God convicted my heart that if this is the problem we say it is, children are dying, women are being harmed, and if this problem still exists in our communities, we have an obligation to speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. So that really thrust me into initially volunteering and then a few years later quitting my job in the pharmaceutical industry to run a local pro-life group. And it was at that local pro-life group that we ran the first ever 40 Days for Life campaign, and then watched God spread that across the nation and eventually around the world. And so that's how it really all began. It was that, I was reluctant. I didn't want to do it, but God really convicted my heart, and through the intercession of my amazing wife, that I was supposed to be involved. And I am so thankful that I have been, because as I look back, and I see the the lives that have been impacted, as I see just the eternal souls that have had a different trajectory just because of the opportunity God has given me to join Him in what He's doing. I am so incredibly thankful, and I think that's the invitation for every person who's listening or watching us right now, to understand that God has a unique and special purpose for you in this work for such a time as this.
That's right. I'm so glad that you brought that up, just the word passive, because um, I was in college and I remember going on a trip to camp, church camp, and on the wall, there was this phrase and it said, compassion is no substitute for action. And
Ooh.
that is something that has stuck with me, because where we say that abortion is sinful and it's wrong, and we know what that is, it takes more than just be well and stay warm. We need to be moved into action, and so, I'm just so honored to finally get to meet you. I can't wait till our banquet on September 4th so I can give you a big hug and just thank you for just the work that you've done, and it's really inspired me because you have kept the main thing, and that is
Mm.
prayer, and so, we're just so excited to get to talk to you today. And so, Erin, Kate, we have
Our
some
turn.
questions about just what's been going on a national level.
Yes. So, I'm already teary getting started this morning. David, can you tell us, there have been some big national events this summer already? Just some things that have changed in the pro-life space, or in restricting abortion access in the United States. And can you update us on some of those big things? I don't know if you would say this, but since the Dobbs decision, maybe this has been the biggest summer, with some big things that have happened, some court cases and things like that. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before I dive into that, if you'll give me just a moment, I want to acknowledge where you kind of ended that question, which is around the Dobbs decision. And for the person who's right now listening to us to understand the role that you played, the greater Jackson area and Mississippi, in changing the course of history for our nation. I'm so thankful for your Attorney General. I'm so thankful for all those who, through prayers and efforts and sacrifices, got us to the point where we have this opportunity where the Supreme Court said, we were wrong before. There was no constitutional right to abortion. And they sent the decision back to the states so that through our elected officials where we live in our states and through Congress can have a voice and be able to decide about abortion. That would not have happened were it not for some of the people who are right now listening to us. And I'm so thankful. Having worked and gone to Jackson and all over Mississippi, and having seen and worked with many of the leaders of the different organizations, I just can't underscore how important your region and your state has been for American history. So with that, so the decision is sent back to the American states, and we've all seen this very tumultuous landscape. And to just kind of sum up what's happened since the Dobbs decision, we've seen very porous state borders as people are leaving and crossing from protective states to less protective states to have abortions. We've seen the explosion in the use of abortion pills. The Guttmacher Institute, the research arm of the abortion industry, 2 years ago estimated that at that point, 63% of abortions were now being delivered chemically, and that number has skyrocketed even since that time. We've seen abortion on state election ballots, where 17 times abortion has been on state ballots since the Dobbs decision. And regrettably, the pro-life movement has lost 14 of those times. And only in this last election cycle did we win 3. But that brings us up to this year of 2025. And as Aaron Kate, you suggested, this incredible summer where we've seen some huge progress. So let me just highlight 3 quick things that are enormous steps of progress that the prayers, the efforts, the faithfulness of the people listening and others like them around the country have had, the achievements that we've accomplished together. Thanks be to God. Number one, the abortion pill, as I mentioned, is now the number one delivery mechanism for abortion. So in some places, I was just in Ohio, there are parts of Ohio where abortion is now 90% delivered through chemical pills. I was in Des Moines, Iowa a few weeks back. 95% of abortions in Iowa are delivered chemically. California, they've seen an explosion in the use of abortion pills. So this is the new delivery mechanism for the abortion industry, even though just this last few months, we've seen new data demonstrating how harmful this pill is, not only for the child in the womb, but for mothers. So a group in Washington, D.C. called the Ethics and Public Policy Center that is run by my friend Ryan Anderson, they, along with a number of allies, were able to acquire insurance claims data for the last 7 years. So to look at not just theoretical or abstract or in a controlled environment research lab, but what is the actual in-use experience of those taking abortion pills. And they were able to look at over 835,000 actual prescriptions and use of abortion pills to say what were the adverse events. Now, the FDA, when they approved the drug in a very rushed fashion, they just ran some quick studies and just threw it out there into the market because of all the money and influence of abortion industry advocates pushing it through the FDA in a rushed process. They claimed that the abortion pill only had a 0.5% adverse event occurrence. So less than 1%, 0.5% of people had serious adverse events after taking the pill, so they claimed. However, when we've looked at now the insurance claims data to say what was the actual in-use experience, they found that it was 22 times higher than that abstract number that was used to approve the drug. 10.93% of women who take the abortion pill have a serious adverse event after taking the pill that is related, directly caused by the pill, and that's now been demonstrated through all this in-use data. So when this was brought to the forefront, and of course, many of the secular media establishments did not want something to challenge their narrative, so the story began to get out through what I would call friendly media, or those who would at least be willing to report a true pro-life headline. But then this story, as it gained traction and the abortion industry was trying to question the way that this research was done, it was simply looking at what people are doing in real use of the abortion drug, which is one of the things that the FDA and others use to make decisions. Well, here's the good news. The good news is this insurance claims data that brought forward the significantly greater harm caused by the abortion pill to women, that information was brought to Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., and also to the FDA, Dr. Marty Makary, who runs the Food and Drug Administration. And they are now reviewing this data, and they are recognizing this is problematic, and they're going to not only consider changing the prescribing data and the information about the drug, but they're going to consider whether this drug should even be on the market. So for us to recognize that if we do our due diligence, if we can demonstrate abortion is always harmful, it always destroys the life of a child, it always has emotional and spiritual consequences for the mother, but it also many times can cause physical harm to the mother and a lifetime of regrets. And therefore, we have to be diligent in illustrating that fact, not only to authorities and decision makers, but also to other women who are facing an unexpected pregnancy, who are scared, and everyone around them is pressuring them and trying to tell them, oh, abortion's your only way out of this situation. And yet, if they understand this is not only not good for the child in my womb, but also this is harmful for me, many of them can then find the hope and help that is offered through organizations like CPC. And then they can have the support network that will walk with them. So that was a huge headline that broke just a few months ago. The second headline, and this is a huge headline, is when in the midst of the budget reconciliation process in the United States House and the United States Senate, and then ultimately with the approval of the administration, we were able to collectively, for the first time in history, strip Planned Parenthood of forced taxpayer funding to the tune of over $500 million. Now, many people were just shocked to even learn that our taxpayer money was being sent to Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers, saying, why are we being forced to underwrite the destruction of innocent lives and the harm to women? But in the budget process, thanks to Speaker Mike Johnson in the United States House, Senator Thune in the United States Senate, and also the coordination and collaboration of the entire pro-life movement in an unprecedented fashion we've never seen before, we were able to marshal forces and we were able to convince that the budget process needed to take that line item out of the budget and strip Planned Parenthood. Now, there was an initial period where we were hoping that it could be for 10 years, but the parliamentarian in the Senate said due to rules that it could only be for 1 year. But understand how powerful this 1 year removal of forced taxpayer funding of Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers is. That is more than a third of their infrastructure for the abortion industry is our money, we being forced to underwrite them. And Planned Parenthood said that they would probably close up to 200 abortion centers if this went through. And it did go through for this year. We've already seen now, just a few weeks after this measure was passed, even as Planned Parenthood tries to fight this in court, which legal experts tell me they think is going to be very fruitless, and ultimately that we will prevail on that. They have already closed 38 Planned Parenthood facilities. All the Planned Parenthoods in Louisiana, the biggest Planned Parenthood abortion center in the whole Western Hemisphere in Houston, Texas, they are shuttering these facilities, and no more children will die there and no more women will be harmed there. So what I want to share, not only with Chrissy, you and Aaron Kate, but also with the person who's listening to us right now, is take hope and realize the Dobbs decision, the overturn of Roe v. Wade, was a first step. We face many ongoing challenges. The threat is still very real, even in Mississippi, but progress is being made. And if we are willing to pray, if we are willing to act, if we are willing to work together collaboratively and strategically, we can and will keep making huge progress that will save lives, protect women, and impact eternal souls.
That's awesome, and I actually did see, 40 Days for Life post just yesterday, "The Planned Parenthood empire is crumbling," and I just thought that was such a great way to put it. I mean, we see the needle moving, and praise God for that. So we're just gonna be real for a minute. Have there been any missteps in the pro-life movement since the overturn?
Yes, absolutely. And, to look at this, I don't want to look at it as failures as much as learning opportunities, right? We all will experience challenges, we'll all experience setbacks, but how do we use this instructively to say, where do we go from here? So I'll just share a few from my perspective. I'm sure others could come up with additional ones as well. So number one, we were not ready for the overturn of Roe versus Wade. In the few months after the Dobbs decision ultimately prevailed on June 24th, 2022, I talked to a number of national leaders and leaders of state organizations, and I said, okay, what is your strategy moving forward? And none of them could give me clarity and give me an actual plan of what they were doing because they were not prepared for it. So for so many years, almost 50 years, the pro-life movement's primary goal was overturn Roe versus Wade, an important, huge step. But people weren't looking beyond that to say, how do we actually operate in a post-Roe world? So most states were not ready to organize and operate on how do we now handle this 50 state by state different landscape. Most places weren't ready for that. Most places were not ready for the backlash of not only the abortion industry, but public opinion as people got very scared thinking that abortion is forever gone and went from thinking it was always available to never available. And there was this visceral response that we saw play out in some of those post-Roe election outcomes that I mentioned earlier, the different ballot initiatives. So we weren't ready, and it took a little while for many in the pro-life movement to be able to begin to shift in this new direction. So that was a misstep, but also one that we're now kind of finding our feet, finding our legs in this new environment. The second thing, and I think this is very important for all of us to consider, is the landscape as it changes requires innovation and requires not always relying on that which got us to this point. So as an example, if now more than 63%, probably close to 75% of abortions are delivered chemically, and we still put a heavy amount of our trying to reduce the supply side of the abortion equation on surgical abortion centers. We are now only 30% as effective as we were a few years ago because that's been a seismic shift. So we have to think differently. Also, if the delivery of abortion now happens largely by people crossing state lines from Mississippi to other states, or by abortionists mailing abortion pills into Mississippi from another state or many times from another country with no protections, how do we identify the person who is at risk? How do we reach them before they make that decision and order that pill or drive across the state border? And how do we come alongside and provide them the help and support that they actually want and need? So the abortion industry a few years ago did a big study of women who had had abortions, and they were trying to show that they loved abortion and thought it was a wonderful thing. But when you actually drill into the data, you find a very interesting phenomenon. 60%, by the abortion industry's own measure, of women who had abortions said they never wanted the abortion, they didn't want to go have it that day, and they would not have had the abortion if they had known of anyone or anywhere that would provide real practical support and help for them throughout the pregnancy and beyond. 60% of abortions people didn't want, sometimes felt pressured by people and or circumstances, and if they had known that there was a place for help and support, they would not have had the abortion. And what that shows us is we now need to meet this challenge by stepping up our pregnancy help like what CPC does. This is the most important frontline work in the entire pro-life movement now more than ever in this post-Roe landscape. And so for the person who's listening, do we still need to pray? Of course, yes. With God, all things are possible. Do we still need to at times do public demonstrations? Of course, yes, we do. Do we still need to bring the light onto the providers of abortion? And do we need to still do things like sidewalk counseling where surgical or chemical abortions are distributed? Yes. But you know what? So much of that has changed that the number one thing we need to raise up and prioritize is the direct help and support for women, because the abortion industry itself told us this is the way that you could cut 60% of the abortions that are happening right now. So for the person who's saying, how can I make a difference, right? What is my role? What was God asking me to do? CPC metro area is the vehicle through which you can meet the need and solve that problem right where you live. And the way you do this is to realize women are still leaving Mississippi to have abortions elsewhere by the thousands. Women are still ordering abortion pills coming into Mississippi from elsewhere. So even though Mississippi has these wonderful protections in place, abortion is still prevalent in the state. And if you want to help reduce that, if you want to ultimately help alleviate that, CPC Metro is the vehicle to do it. They can reach women in a time of need before anyone else can. They can offer them that lifeline, that support, and that help, and they can walk with them. You can walk with those mothers throughout the pregnancy and even after the child is born. So though we have made missteps as a movement, and we'll continue to make missteps, and we learn from that, the most important thing is to say, what is it telling us about where to prioritize our time, our energy, and our resources? And right here, CPC Metro, this is the place that will do more good to save more lives in Mississippi right now than ever before.
You know, you hit on a very important point. What really just struck me about what you just said is when you were talking about abortion regret. We have this banquet coming up on September 4th. I keep saying it, and in preparation for that, I have sat down with several women to just hear their story. And the common thread that I've heard from all of them is they don't want to abort their baby. Some of them chose life, some of them did not. And I was just trying to figure out by sitting down with these women what's going on, because just because abortion is legal here now doesn't mean that what was driving them to the abortion clinic is gone. And so we just sat there for a minute, and I the theme for the banquet this year is "She Needs You." And I asked them, "Take me back 5 years, sometimes 20 years. What did you need during that crisis time in your life?" And I heard I needed somebody to speak life into me. I needed somebody to let me breathe. I needed somebody to let me cry. I needed support. They don't want to abort their children. They feel alone. That's really the common thing. So, um, I know that these kind of events have a very special place in your heart. So, as we begin to wrap up, and I'm so thankful that you've spent the time with us this morning, could you just talk about the banquet and how they do make a difference? It's more than really to me, it's more than a fundraiser. It's coming together and really seeing the problem and putting wheels on what we're going to do next. So, could you just talk about your experience with these events?
You bet, Chrissy. Thank you. That's a great question. First of all, I'll just say that I am so honored to be coming to this specific event. I have been a huge fan of CPC Metro for a long time, and to be able to be a part, I so respect Aaron Kate, your leadership, Chrissy, your guidance and leadership, and just the direction that your organization has taken to be so strategic in this new landscape and to be innovative and doing new things. When we come to this event, we come to get hope because so many times we look and we can despair and say, oh, I thought Roe v. Wade being overturned, I thought that was the end of the story. And it's not really. Oh, we still have a lot of work to do. Yes, we do. But guess what? We get to do it together. And when we come to an event like this, we get to not only hear what is going on in the organization and to hear what victories have been achieved over this last year and where the organization's going in the next year and how together we can be a part of that. We also get to look around the room and we get to see friends, we get to see family members, we get to see fellow believers, and we get to be strengthened to realize we are many different parts, but we are one body working together to advance God's will. I'll never forget one event that for me was game changing. I was invited to a pro life banquet in Dallas when I was still living in College Station, Texas. And I had just gotten started in the pro life movement and really didn't know what I was doing or how I was doing it. But I walked into a room in Dallas and there were somewhere around 1,000, maybe 1,200 people in this banquet hall. And I was blown away. Wow, there's this many people like me who actually care about this, who care about mothers, who care about children. So that started to already lift up my spirits. But then, speaker after speaker, they were casting a vision and sharing hope and sharing stories of victories. And for me, what it did is it convicted me to go back and do more. And it was at that room where I was seeing all these people and I was hearing these stories and grasping this vision that I started to think about, wow, what could happen in a local town? What impact can it have? And how could that impact in a local town start to have a ripple effect in other places? So I went back, a 3-hour drive back home to College Station. And not long after that, I went into our staff, our little pro-life organization, the Coalition for Life, and we prayed together for an hour and taking that vision, taking that story, those stories we'd heard, taking that big idea of fellowship and lots of people coming together that I had just experienced at a banquet, similar to what we're going to be doing on September 4th. We just prayed through that and said, God, what do you want us to do? What do you want from us? How do you want us to take what we've been blessed by at this event and put it into action? And what he put on our hearts was a time frame of 40 days and 3 activities: prayer and fasting, peaceful vigil, and community outreach. And to do that at our local Planned Parenthood abortion center, which have been killing children and wounding women for years. And we ended that hour of prayer, followed by the inspiration of that banquet, and felt convicted to go and lead the first ever 40 Days for Life campaign outside of that abortion center that brought the abortions down by 28% in our town. And then by the grace of God, we saw it begin to spread city by city. Then we started coordinating national organized 40 Days for Life campaigns, eventually internationally coordinated 40 Days for Life campaigns. And I look back and trace it all the way back to that banquet and the inspiration that God lit, that fire he lit in my heart and in my soul that we put into action. And now, even advancing beyond what you were saying in the introduction when bringing me on, there have now been more than 25,000 lives confirmed saved through 40 Days for Life campaigns throughout all 50 American states and dozens of nations around the world. And we have seen hundreds of abortion centers close their doors, hundreds of workers leave the abortion industry. And I can say, God, you are amazing because it was that inspiration you brought through one event and then what we did as a result of that. Now, what's the instructive lesson here to the person who's coming on September 4th? Are you supposed to go start a worldwide movement that's going to save 25,000 lives? I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe God's going to bring you there. You're going to see all the other people in the room. You're going to get excited. You're going to understand the reality of the challenges that we still face. Yes, abortion is still prevalent in Mississippi, despite all the protections, despite the lead role you took in overturning Roe versus Wade. But we recognize those challenges honestly and say, how strategically do we meet this challenge? And how do we become that support lifeline for a mother to let her know, I will help you. We in the community, we will help you. And then through that, as you come to the event, as you experience that inspiration and that hope, allow God to speak to your heart and say, Lord, what is it you want me to do? Where do you want me to invest my time? Where do you want me to invest my talents? What do you want me to do investing my treasure for such a time as this? And as God puts that on your heart, then to take your step of faith. It may look very different from mine. That's great. But find what God is asking you to do. He's not calling you to this event by accident. He's calling you there because he has something he wants you to do. And it's more, yes, he wants you probably to write a check or credit card and make a one-time gift and a monthly pledge, yes. But more importantly, he wants you to help others, to help those in need. Women in Mississippi right now need you. They need your voice. They need your prayers. They need your support, and they need what you can bring them through the pregnancy center. So ask God to show you, come to the event, be inspired, be filled with hope, and then ask God to show you, what can I do, Lord? And as he reveals it, say, yes, as for me and my house, we will serve you, Lord. When you do that, you will make a life-saving difference. You will meet children who are alive because of your yes. You will meet mothers who will hug you with tears streaming down their face saying, thank you for helping me to avoid a decision I would have regretted for a lifetime. And you will know that you are co-laboring with God in his harvest field to build his kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven. So I can't wait to see you at the banquet. We're going to celebrate. We're going to get excited. And what happens after that banquet will change the very course of history.
Absolutely, and that's really what it's all about. I'm reminded of a verse of scripture, just as you were talking. It says, "Each one should use whatever gift he has received to serve others faithfully, administering the grace of God in its various forms." And so when you talk about just, are you gonna start a global movement? Maybe, but if you're sitting in the room or even if you're listening or any in any way deciding to take action, God has equipped you with something unique that you can be useful with and for his kingdom. And so, um, Erin Kate, if you could just give us the details, just give us a little crash course on the banquet
Sure.
as we come to a close.
Sure, that was so wonderful. Thank you, David. I know everybody's fired up about it now. So, our banquet is Thursday, September the 4th. It is a free event. If you are already a supporter of ours, you've probably been to a banquet. You may have become a supporter through a banquet before. We encourage you, if you are already a supporter, this is an event for you to bring new friends into the ministry. You already have a heart for this ministry, so look for people that you know, friends, family, people at church, people at work who have a heart similar to yours that may be encouraged by this and may be moved to support CPC. We're not looking for your wealthiest friends. We're looking for people who have a heart, just as he said, the Lord works through his Holy Spirit, through his people. And that's how this is how this abortion issue, I believe, is going to be solved, is through the hearts and the action of believers who are called to action through the Holy Spirit. So you're not having to look for wealth. I want to make that clear. You're looking for people who may have a heart for the unborn. So if you can be a table host at the banquet and bring friends, or you can just bring, you don't have to host a whole table. You can just bring friends to the banquet. We're going to post some information about how to get in touch with us for the banquet. But it is just one night where you're going to be inspired. I know you're going to want to hear, now that you've heard David, you want to hear more. And we'll have testimonies and stories from women, and it's going to be a great night. But it is a free event. Just let us know if you're interested in coming. But we encourage you, if you're already a CPC supporter, bring some new folks, bring some friends in. As he said, we're in this together. This is a where we are going to lock arm in arms and serve the women in our community who are at risk for abortion. So we need as many people as we can to be involved.
Absolutely. Thank you for providing the details for that. As we close, I just wanted to share one more story, and it goes back to the sign on the wall that I was referring to a little bit earlier in this episode. Compassion is no substitute for action. On that same wall, there was another sign, and it said, "What then does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." That's Micah 6:8. And so, David, thank you so much for being here and just for really being an inspiration to us for what it looks like to live that out. We are so grateful for you and for you giving your time to just sit here with us and inspire us and encourage us.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for the work that you do. I look forward to being a tiny part of coming alongside you on September 4th. I look forward to being with every person who's listening to us now. And together, with God's help, we truly can help to make abortion not only unavailable, but unwanted, unthinkable. We can do this together. With God, all things are possible. Look forward to being together with you.
Absolutely. Well, we are out of time for today. We hope that you will join us for the banquet on September 4th. And if you would like to know how to reserve your spot, please reach out to us via social media, email, or just come by and see us. Until next time.